Hello, welcome to PureLogic U. I'm Corinne Bouchard, CEO of PureLogic IT Solutions. Today we have Jason Barton. His experience is 20 years in the industry and has been with Red Hat for about 2 years now. So at Summit, you did talk a lot about automation. So what are some of the motivations of automation?
Yeah, probably what I think of one of the funnier motivations, but a very real one, is the fact that historically people are terrible at asking for what they actually want. Right, and how does that actually affect a business, right, in a big way? It means that probably your customer base, right, the market you're trying to address, doesn't always actually accurately ask for what it is that they want at the end of the day. This means that you have to be prepared to react and change, right? So these days, the people doing the best at quickly refining what they do, quickly giving someone something to look at, to say whether or not it actually meets their needs, and then build on that. That's one of the biggest motivations of all for automation right now. There's other business motivators too when we think about the way that people deliver applications and services these days to meet those needs of the market or the clients. Sometimes we take a long time delivering something, and it gets delivered in a very monolithic way, right? So it's a big, heavy lift, and a lot of cost came with it. And if we go back to that first point about people typically asking for maybe not necessarily the most representative thing of what they want, then what they deliver has a lot that you actually don't want to take care of in the over the long term. Meaning, if I'm a software developer, for example, and I deliver 10 features, and it turns out that only 2 of them were really relevant to my customer base, I'd like to be able to get rid of those 8 that weren't relevant. Again, automation comes into play there. And lastly, I guess one of the big trends that everyone keeps talking about all the time, especially in the Canadian market over the last few months, is the consumption of public cloud infrastructure. Now that we have services like Azure and AWS opening up for the first time on Canadian soil, lots of people are making use of it. But in order to do that, probably you want to be able to have a very dynamic operational practice, right? And that idea of dynamic, again, leads back to automation. Right? We want to be able to do things repeatably, right? We want to be able to do them quickly, and we want to be able to do them in small little pieces at a time so that we can either do it quickly or roll it back if we need to. So whether I'm trying to react quickly to my customers or I'm trying to do something that's a little bit more technically focused, like consuming public cloud, right? Automation is an absolute first principle that people need to put into place in their operations.
That's perfect. So it's like getting your house in order before you actually go out to the cloud, or being able to adjust your business needs to be able to actually provide that product or service.
Yeah. It is. It's absolutely something that resonates with people when they finally sit down and talk to us a little bit about it, right? In order to actually take advantage of all these different infrastructures that are being provided to people, right, to our different organizations, you need to have one portable operational practice, if you will, right? Every time someone gives another option to you for infrastructure or something else to try to meet some of these needs of the market or the clients, right? If we have to build a new operational practice for each one, that really is an awful lot of cost, right? It's a lot of complexity, potentially hiring of more people. You want to try to put that aside and instead embrace something like a portable operational practice.
Excellent.
Multiple infrastructures, one operational practice.
Excellent. And that's what we're talking about today from the automation and in enabling that in IT. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So Jason, you've talked to us about infrastructure as code in the past, and that's a really interesting concept. Maybe you can explain that for our viewers today.
Yeah, sure. So we've talked a little bit about the motivations for automation, right? And that they're a big enabler for your ability to be able to react to business requirements. One of the technical tactics, if you will, is infrastructure as code, right? Where infrastructure as code represents the idea of being able to have a definition or a perfect representation of the type of infrastructure or applications and services that you're actually trying to put in play to deliver that business service. Right? Some of the things I normally try to break out for infrastructure as a code is if you just simply ask yourself the question, do I have systems in my environment that I have deployed that are important to my business that if something went wrong with them, I wouldn't actually be able to rebuild them? right? And almost everybody's going to raise their hand, right? That in their environments they have something like that, right? Which is probably actually a source of concern. We often laugh, right? That there's always the one system. Nobody touched that system, right? Whatever you do, don't touch that system. We could never recreate that system. So we want to move away from something like that. That's like a snowflake, right? And what we don't want is an environment of snowflakes, because they're very difficult to maintain and take care of, right? We've learned how to do it, but it's been in a very labor-intensive, right, type of way, and that's very costly. So now instead we want to move to something that's a little bit more, and some people use the term a Phoenix server, right? That Phoenix server being, if something were to happen and that system were literally to burn to the ground, could we actually bring it back up from the ashes? You'll only be able to do that if you actually have something that's already a perfect representation of that system, or a set of systems that are combined together to deliver that application, because we often have an N-tier type of architecture where there's multiple systems, say load balancers, web servers, application servers, databases. So we want to be able to represent that entire infrastructure, right, perfectly, so that we can recreate it. Some of the tactics to do those things are, one, obviously, let's have some definition files of some type. They're probably just, say, ASCII, right, form, human readable in nature. We're going to talk about a tool called Ansible, right, and another offering, Ansible Tower from Red Hat, in a little while. But it's the idea of having some sort of automation language that can start to represent that infrastructure for us.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Jason. That explained it really well. So I'm interested to find out what Red Hat actually has to offer in this. Can you go through all the different technologies?
I guess the approach to automation, right now there's no one single solution that's going to address all of this for you, right? IT operations, it's complex, there's lots of people involved, there's lots of different teams involved, right? So what we actually do is we try to start layering things on top of one another, right? So some of those layerings that we have, or those offerings, are things like satellites, right? So we have a systems lifecycle management system called Red Hat Satellite, right? So we're going to think about it for doing things like provisioning and deprovisioning of OSs, right? We also have Ansible, right? Once we've actually provisioned that system, right, we probably want it to actually be able to do something, right? So that was that topic of infrastructure as code. We'll use Ansible to actually turn that system into something, right, that we want, an application or a service, or part of one, right? There's also the idea of cloud forms sitting on top of all of that, right? We probably want some overarching common management plane, right, for all those different infrastructures, be it public cloud or private cloud or virtualization, right? We're going to use cloud forms to do that, right, for visibility, policy, things like that. And finally, insights. That's kind of a proactive analytics system, right? So once we have all those systems in play in a nice automated way, right, how can we care and feed for it, right? Can we make sure that we're still protected, that it's still secure, that it's still healthy? So we'll use that analytics system to actually provide us with a little bit of insight into the systems, and then help us apply any recommendations it has in an automated way.
Interesting. So typically, I think some of our clients think of Red Hat as more of a Linux operating system. But in fact, we have multiple layers and tools through the automation, through cloud, through analytics, and then management that we can actually leverage instead of just thinking of Red Hat as a Linux operating system. That we are very proud of that lineage and heritage, but absolutely we have found ourselves very uniquely positioned, right, to offer, you know, guidance, recommendations, solutions, services, right? To take people from, I used to just take care of in a very manual way an operating system, right, to a very full-fledged, very advanced IT operations, where we can go all the way from a developer writing code or integrating third-party products, and in a single line of sight, take it all the way out to production. That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much for attending PureLogic University, and we'll see you next time.